been pulled by the board members.
Yes, BCS1, FMPF5, P1, ST3, and TL3.
Are there any board members who would like to pull anything else? P1 has been called. So if you want to hit F5, you can refresh if you haven't already done that. So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Ms. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. So we're under new business at this point. BCS1, Mr. Superintendent.
BCS1 Comprehensive Safety Inspection Report. I recommend the board approve the 2019 Comprehensive Safety Inspection Report.
Motion made by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Brill. I pulled this item, so is Mrs. Paul still here? Yes, I see her. So I just want to preface my comments with the statement that I know that Mrs. Paul has done an outstanding job of handling the building department and all those functions that come under her control with respect to problems in the schools that need repairs and all that. So I don't want anybody to suggest, I don't want to suggest anybody that this is on Mrs. Paul. And I read that article in the newspaper, and I know the number of citations in the schools have come down significantly over the last several years. So I just want to get that statement out. But I read this report, and I've got a couple issues which I've gone over with Mrs. Paul. First of all, there was a few schools that had serious life safety violations, but there was no way on that report where I could find to indicate which of, for example, if one school had 10 violations and there were 2 serious safety violations, there was no way to determine which of those were serious and which weren't. So I've asked Mrs. Paul to bring back to the board those pages, and I went through all 260 whatever pages, to bring back to the board only those schools that have serious violations and notate on those schools which one of those violations is serious. Because as an attorney, and I've already talked to our general counsel, when we approve this report, we are on notice of all of the safety violations that are there. And if there are serious life safety violations on that report that we're on notice of, and someone gets hurt because of that violation, we're going to get hung in court. There's no way we're going to win a lawsuit against us when we're on notice that there's problems, and especially those, I saw some that are and I don't know if those were serious or not because, again, I can't tell, but there's some schools that have 5, 6 citations for the same item. Every single report comes out this citation again. So I just want to point out a couple of those. At Dreyfus High School, storage of the golf carts and batteries, I don't know if that's a serious life safety issue, but it's been cited 12 times. 12 citations for that. If it only that doesn't cost any money to move the golf carts and the batteries. If they're in a place where they cause a safety issue for the children, they need to be moved. Why should we wait for the 13th citation to get that done? It doesn't apparently cost anything for them to move it. Page 22, Belle Glade Elementary School. There have been 6 citations to indicate on all evacuation maps, both primary and secondary evacuation routes are not notated. What is involved in correcting this problem? If we have a substitute teacher in that school and the evacuation route that's blocked, that's on the map, and the secondary one is not there, the substitute teacher is not going to know how to get those kids out of that school. So that, to me, is a serious safety violation. I saw that on many, many of the schools. I don't know if you consider that serious. I do. I think that should be fixed. I don't know what it takes to fix the maps, but I would think that doesn't cost a lot of money. It just takes some time. Somebody's got to put the time in to get it done. On page 67, Glade Central High School, lines 3 and 19, indicate 10 citations in 2 separate buildings to replace missing call buttons for emergency areas of rescue assistance. For God's sake, if we have a code red in that school and those things are not working, we got a serious issue. So the corrective action date on that one was June 30th, 2018. We're now almost to June 30th, 2019. It's 10 citations for the same thing. Fix it. So I've asked Mrs. Paul to bring back to us the serious citations with a deadline on what she anticipates will be the time that it will be corrected and how much money it's going to take to fix it. So this board has a full understanding of what serious life safety issues are in our schools and when we're going to get those fixed. So I just wanted to point that out before we vote on this tonight, and I'm hoping that, and again, Riviera Beach Prep on page 163 of the report shows 10 serious life safety issues, so 10 life safety issues. So we need to make sure we understand that. Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So I guess I officially passed the baton to Mr. Barbieri this year because I have become a comprehensive safety inspection report nerd. And I will thank you for having this summary. I actually also went through the 228 pages. I decided tonight not to pull it because I was going to reach out to staff. We have made a huge reduction, though, in the number of citations, but I too had found that some of them just don't make sense to me. When it comes to moving things. I know that I've been told in the past that there's no place to put it. So I will look forward to staff coming back. I will not reach out to Ms. Paul about it, but I had planned, I went through just those that were coded MS, OS, and CS, which were the serious citations. And I did find it very helpful to have the summary report for the first time ever, so that I didn't have to sleep with the report to try and figure it all out. So I'll look forward to getting it back. And my only wish was I was going to say I'd love to see us eliminate all of these by next year, now that we have the money for the maintenance items from the referendum. I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work over the summer. But hopefully you can come back and give us a clean report. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So my request would be that we get that information before the next meeting, the first reading on the budget, because 918 of these violations, 918 of 1322 are in maintenance, which I think is proving Gary Mitten's point. And so I think that we need to look at that through the eyes of the budget and hear what Mrs. Paul says we need in terms of allocation to repair this.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw?
I think it's important also that when this report comes out, that a lot of these things may have already been corrected. So I think part of the information we need to know is how many of them have been corrected so that we have a better picture of the accuracy of the information.
Mr. Paul?
Okay, so, Mr. Barbieri, our board chair, Mr. Shaw, vice chair and board, and Superintendent Fenoy, we have made tremendous progress in terms of reducing the number of violations. But as you know, that a lot of the violations that occurred previously, the district did not have dollars to do that. And so now that we do, we are remarkably focused on getting rid of them, but we will always have violations. As long as we have building codes and things happening, we will always have violations. The question I think that we need to answer is our approach in terms of dealing with the serious violations. So they're broken up from the maintenance side, the capital side, which are construction related, and then also from the operational side, which goes to the school. And so I think collectively my team has worked very hard to try to eliminate the majority of them, and there are still some out there. In terms of the capital side, it is our intent to have them all done by December 2019. In terms of the operational side that goes to the campuses, we will work with our regional superintendents to work with the schools to help alleviate those type of violations. It could be as simple as an extension cord that has a lot of stuff plugged into it. And so when we come around, it's pulled away, and when we leave, it goes back. So it's a question of trying to change the culture also. So I'm confident that we will definitely reduce, especially the simple ones that we can deal with right away, but some a little bit more complex that requires a lot more work. So it is our intent to definitely reduce the number and eliminate them for that period of time, but there will always, as I said before, be others that arise. So
I would just add, I mean, now that I think it's also important for Ms. Paul's team, Ed Tierney, Keith Oswald, Glenda Sheffield, Dr. Sheffield. So when we know specific schools have items that actually must be taken care of at the school, we have to have a mechanism to make sure that the regional superintendents and instructional superintendents are following up with principals to make sure that they're happening. And so to Wanda's point, there's definitely things that require maintenance and construction, but maps at a school, that's a school issue. That's literally a function that I'm going to say that we need to make sure principals are aware. And so part of the communication strategy is to make sure Wanda's team, Ms. Paul's team may have that stuff, but it's important for the academic side to have that. So as we restructure some of our meetings, to make time to talk about operational issues in the schools so that we can make sure that those principals have the support they need to take care of those things moving forward.
Thank you. And Mrs. Paul, again, I stopped at 6 schools over the last week and a half. Some of them weren't in my district. And coincidentally, every one of those schools that I stopped at, your crews were there doing work. I mean, there's putting footers in for, you know, I mean, it's just amazing how much stuff has gone on. So I appreciate everything you're doing. And this, I didn't mean for this to be a, you know, complaint against you, because I know that you're doing phenomenal work this summer. So
we have very dedicated employees that have been here a long time, and they're working feverishly to get some of this work done. So it's really good. We're in a really good position to have money to afford to do them. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a vote on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. BRD
1, right?
BRD 1, I guess that's mine.
Is it you?
It's board.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right.
I recommend the board approve and confirm the board member travel as submitted and that it meets the requirements of Florida Statute 1001.39, effective July 1st, 2019. Motion by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. BRD 2, I recommend the board approve and confirm the board member travel as submitted and that it meets the requirements of Florida Statute 1001.39, effective July 1st, 2019. Motion by Mrs. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion? Ms. Brill?
No, I was just going to ask procedurally to our council, when we do bring forward our own travel, are we allowed to vote on our own, or do we have to abstain from our own items?
Mrs. Rico?
I would suggest you probably go ahead and abstain. This is all new. So, yeah, abstain from these.
So, Mrs. Andrews, would
Reach
you
out,
like
yeah.
to abstain from the prior vote?
Yeah.
Okay, so that, the record should show that that was 6-1 with Mrs. Andrews abstaining. And Dr. Robinson?
Didn't think about that.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
Okay, so Mr. Shaw.
Just one question for Ms. Rico. I asked Tony today to prepare the travel things for FSBA for both the December and June meetings and put it together. If we all abstain, there's not enough members of the board who can vote on that.
Well, we'll
So-
have to look into this. This is another
Okay,
new legislative statute,
Well-
effective July 1.
Ms. Brill?
Well, just as a follow-up to Mr. Shaw's comment, though, each person would be voted on individually, so there wouldn't be a quorum issue if you're voting on them individually, because I don't think we can be a package deal.
Right, you're going to vote on each separate one,
Yes, the way we did tonight.
and, yeah.
All right. So on the BRD2, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Dr. Robinson abstaining. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just going to abstain because General Counsel said this in public, but I think it's actually ridiculous because if, in fact, it meets the criteria outlined in statute, it's not for personal benefit, right? So, but go ahead and do your
I
research.
understand that, but if you could just bear with us on this new statute that is effective July 1st, and this travel just came up to our knowledge.
So are
that
you
we have to get
suggesting you
ready.
may change your opinion at the next meeting?
It could,
Okay.
okay? It's an
Okay,
ever,
we understand. It's brand new
Thank
law,
you.
so it's a brand new law, so you've got to have time to interpret. ELR 1,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Superintendent.
Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the revised calendar for the 2019-2020 as submitted.
We have a motion? Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mr. Shaw. Any discussion? Ms. Brill?
I didn't even get a chance to motion to you. You figured out I was going to say something. So we did vote on this before. I am going to vote in favor of it. I'm not thrilled with the calendar, as you know from the comments in the past regarding Veterans Day and the start date. But I will approve this because we need everybody to know when they're coming back and everybody's left and has their plans for this coming school year.
Thank you. Any further? Mrs. Andrews?
And I'm not happy because I would really like to see Veterans Day off. And so I want you all to work on trying to see how you can get that done. I really do believe that we can do better. And so I'm asking that we really continue to look. This is for this 1 year. I just didn't want anybody to lose money. As I met with Dr. Fenoy, he said all of the unions and everybody was really concerned about somebody losing their paycheck. So that's the first most important thing to me. So I will vote for this because I do want people to get paid.
Ms. McQuinn?
Yes, so for the public to understand, we're voting for this coming year only. And I think we've made it very clear, most of us, how we feel about Veterans Day. And surely, we cannot be ever beholden to, and I realize I asked, by the way, in terms of the pay issue, the pay gap, whether it was our board policy or whether it was state, and it is state. So I want to make that very clear to the public also, because it is really, it's ludicrous that we are held to something, again, because of it started preparing for testing, and now we can't get out of it.
Any other discussion? Dr. Robinson?
And so just as a follow-up to all this, my request is that Teaching and Learning give us a report on how we are going to ensure that students understand the freedom is not free, that the veterans have served us, and also a conscious effort to bring veterans into the classroom to share their stories as part of history. Because I'm telling you, I didn't pay attention to history in school. My veteran patients taught me history. And I think it would be outstanding if we have a very conscious effort to make sure, even if it's videos of the veterans telling their story, to support what they're learning in the classroom. Because it brought history alive for me.
Absolutely.
Ms. Whitfield, is that a waiver you want to speak?
No, I wanted to ask a question. It was on my understanding that the students still have the 11th off, but not the teachers. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear. To everyone that's watching, the students will not be there, but the teachers will be there, unfortunately. But that, I just want to make sure we're voting on the same thing. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. FMPF 5, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. FMPF 5, I recommend the board approve the purchase of software licenses, maintenance, and support and services for the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, not to exceed $500,000.
Motion. Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mr. Shaw. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. P1.
P1, I recommend the board approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
Motion. Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Andrews, you pulled that?
Yes, I pulled it because most of the people were from my district, and I've been pretty much aware of some of these issues because I do get the calls. And we've been talking about this for years because it has been a problem, you know, with this process and how we handle our teachers. So one of the things I just know I need as a board member is that we just get the numbers. I don't know where these teachers are coming from, and I'm asking through the board chair to the superintendent and to Human Resources that we get the names and the schools of where this is happening. I just know I've been working with some of these issues, and I had to call the region superintendent to find out what was going on. And so I just know in one instance, that wasn't signed off because I initiated to go into that school and check on what was going on with the teacher. So the information that I received tonight, you know, from the superintendent, I knew that because I do keep up with my schools. I'm really worried that this may be a pattern in some of the schools. And if I only get the numbers, which we've always given the numbers, this is nothing new in Palm Beach County, we don't give the schools or the names of where the people are actually being released from. We have 830 37 separations of employment, so I don't know where they're from. I just know the ones that impact me. So I think we need to kind of do a better job and maybe put that in the board office so that when I'm up here every week, I can look and see who's actually non-renewing people in District 6 and anywhere else. And I'm visiting the school, so I need to know that. And I think that holds true for the principals, because sometimes the principals are having difficulty, and we don't know that because maybe they're getting an annual contract instead of a 3-year contract. We don't get this information. We just get the numbers. It can certainly be requested from public information, but as a board member, I want to know what's going on in the schools, and this is an issue. So I just want to know if there's a form, since we ask that the region person actually signs off. Is it a form that the region office signs off before that person is let go or given the letter, or is it something that's after the fact? I don't know what that is, what that situation is. I know over the years I've worked with a lot of teachers who were let go and they got picked up. But it was a lot of work on my part with helping them through that process. I call Human Resources a lot because they call me. I've spoken to the Classroom Teachers Association because this is an issue. It's a big issue here in Palm Beach County. We have a teacher shortage, but yet and still we're letting people go left and right. And I see many of our schools start up with substitutes at the very beginning of the year. So we need to get to the bottom of, if it's real and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then they will be let go. But it needs to be monitored better. So I have a question as whether the region superintendent signs off before that person gets the letter. So they have actually sat down with the principal at the school before it actually happens, or is it after the fact? I just know one situation that I worked with just a few weeks ago that it was probably after the fact. So if there's a form, I like to know that. I think back in the day when I worked in Human Resources, we had a little a draft program of how, when you counseled with the teacher, you went through all these processes with them. And so at the end, when you finally called them in, you didn't have to give a reason, but it was documented on that little format that everybody was in the picture. Everybody knew what was going on. So at the end, if they were let go without saying anything, the person knew that. So I'm not quite sure if it's that clear out there. And when I see 837 people let go and we're out here recruiting and having vacancies, I need to have more information. So I'm asking the superintendent to let me know what that sheet looks like.
Yeah, we'll get it to you. I mean, I think let's be really clear. So that we did not let go 800 people. Okay. That is not true. It was a total of 114. Okay. So that's a 20% reduction in last year. Okay. That's less than 2% of all of our teachers. And the instructionals, the regionals, the HR specialists, and the deputies, it is reviewed by the entire team before any of the information is given to the teacher. So we have those records. And the important part is, and I'm sure that's why Ms. Rico wants to speak, this information is highly sensitive.
Thank you. Just as a point of information, if I may, to clarify the non-reappointment process that you are all discussing process-wise, the information that the board requested, I'm sure will be informative, but this is a non-reappointment. It is not a let-go. It's not a firing. It's not a for-cause. There's a total distinction about that. And so I just wanted to make that clear in terms of those standards, because we do have a lot of litigation over that, and that clarity is important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrews, then Mrs. Whitfield.
Yeah,
Go ahead and follow.
And I do know that, but if I have a teacher shortage, I really want to be informed.
Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. So I just had a question about the process as well. I feel like a lot of the people that came before us, the reason that they took the time to come here and to talk to us about this is because they feel that their principal unfairly targeted them, which to me seems different, right? So I'm curious about within the process, if the regional superintendents or if someone else has had a chance to see these people perform their duties besides the principal, just so that we can take care to make sure that no one is being unfairly targeted. Dr. Fenoy, do you know the process?
Yeah, that's not possible. And let me be really clear. So I've been in education since 1999. From the very beginning, my training was exactly what the people in this district are going through, and I was in 2 other districts. The reality of a regional superintendent or instructional superintendent going into any classroom in the entire portfolio of their schools is an impossibility. As a matter of fact, if you send the boss's boss into a classroom, now you have a retaliation. Because now, why would a regional superintendent go into a classroom do an observation on a teacher that's been identified as having problems? It just now you're building a bigger case. The people at the ground level, and like in these cases, needs to be the evaluators, the people who are charged with evaluating those teachers. Once you bring in my staff, it starts to look different. That's like me going into there's no difference between a regional or me going to a classroom of teachers and doing an observation. That's just not. I have never heard that. I've never seen it, and I would never recommend something like that because now you give the perception if you're calling in all the dogs to come get me. And that is not something that I just I've never allow anything like that to happen. No.
Ms. Brill, then Dr. Robinson, then Mr. Shaw, and Ms. Andrews. So we'll start with Ms. Brill.
Thank you. So something that's related to this, 2 teachers did reach out to me who were removed from the position they were in and placed into a different position in their schools that they did not want. But the concern they had, which I was going to bring up when we meet, is that they were told after the opportunity to do voluntary transfer. So they were told a day or 2 after, so they missed that. And then one of them reached out to one of the regional people to get permission to go to the job fair because she was under the impression that she's not allowed to go to the job fair. So I think that when changes are made, if there's a way that the principals and the schools could be cognizant of when the voluntary transfer period ends so that if it's something where they're being placed back in a classroom that they don't want, that they have the opportunity while, there is a chance for them to get placed elsewhere that it happened and that it not be a day or 2 later.
Yeah, we can review that.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I'm really clear that everybody can't teach, and I'm really clear that everybody can't teach everybody, right? But my concern is no one, in my opinion, should be now reappointed and not know it's coming. Like it should, in my opinion, there should have been multiple coaching episodes and opportunities, right? And feedback. And that's the thing that troubles me. I have no clue about the individuals that spoke, but I just want some assurance, if it's not there, that we need to put it there, that it's almost like the portfolio deal for third grade students before they're retained. We should have clear documentation that people were coached, that they were sent for whatever the training is, that whoever over here, the experts showed them, and they still did not respond. Because we have to coach people up, right? So, thank you.
Mr. Shaw.
I looked at the sheet. I think the public needs to be aware, and everybody here, that there were, as one board member said, 837 separations. But if you look at that, 700 of them were for people who either relocated or jobs ended or were temporary. So it really, don't take this that it was, and this could have been custodians, cafeteria workers, maintenance employees. So it definitely does not mean that we terminated 800 people. It just means that we had 800 people who are no longer employed with us for a variety of reasons. And, this is one of those things, and this may come across really negative. That's why state law says that school board members stay out of personnel, because we should not be in the middle of this issue. This is the job that we hire the superintendent and staff and principals to do this job. And when we interfere with it, we're jumping into a situation that we do not know the details. And I think it's just a caution that we need to have.
Mrs. Andrews.
I still think there needs to be a flow chart so that as a school board member, I know what that process is. I'm not trying to do the work of the people that get paid to do it. But if I'm the board member, I want to know that people were given every opportunity to get the support and assistance that they needed, and everybody went through that process, including the region superintendent. Right now, I don't know that. When I saw this number, this number needs to be broken down. I'm sure it's broken down over in Human Resources. We did it for years. But the bottom line, when you break it down for a board member, it's very clear. It could be very clear. I have problems when bus drivers tell me they're let go, you know, and they've departed. I don't know how many, we say we have maintenance problems. How many of those are in here? This needs to be broken down for me as a person getting the information so that I can have a better handle on what's going on when somebody picks up the phone to call me. I certainly would like to just stay with policy, but I get all kinds of calls as a board member from my constituents who may work for the school district, so I definitely want to be knowledgeable. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson? Oh, Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, just, and the backup documentation we have, there's 31 different reasons why people left. I don't know what kind of flow charts we need to have that are not kind of included in this.
Human resources, I'm talking about for the teachers, where we have a critical shortage area. That's where I'm talking about a flow chart.
Okay.
Process for non-reappointment.
So, a quick comment. I agree, Mr. Shaw, that the school board should not get into administrative matters, but yet we sit at this dais and we hear from teachers that are being non-renewed that are highly effective, and then we're asked to approve funding in the budget to go out and recruit new teachers every year, and we were told that this year, I believe we had 250 vacancies at the beginning of the year where we had to put substitutes in because we didn't have enough teachers. So, I mean, it's an issue that this board has to face, that we have a shortage of teachers every year. So I think it's reasonable. You know, I understand the legality, you know, that we face issues with, you know, lawsuits, but I don't understand, and maybe I can be enlightened at some other point, why I don't know who suggested it, but if a teacher's going to be I mean, we heard from a couple that I thought they sound like great teachers, but they had no clue. The one man that stood here, he had no clue, he said, why he went to all the things that he was supposed to go to, volunteered for everything, was there at night. He had no clue at the end of the year that he was being non-renewed. I mean, it seems to me that if we're going to go out and hire new teachers every year, then there should be some documentation along the way so people are warned, you're not doing a good job, we need to get somebody in there to coach you, you know, we've had some complaints, we need to fix those. I mean, to find out in the end of May that you don't have a job and you have no idea why when you've done everything you think you should have done and you're rated highly effective, I just think it's an issue that, you know, and I don't know how to fix it. I'm suggesting to you, Mr. Superintendent, I don't know how to fix that, but it just doesn't seem reasonable that teachers that are highly effective at the end of the year don't know that they're being non-renewed until the end of the year when they're told all of a sudden you're not coming back next year. I mean, they should have some warning during the year, so there should be something that goes on during the year. And I know Julianne's going to tell me that the statute is absolutely clear that you can non-renew without any reason whatsoever, but it doesn't make sense.
I'm saying something else.
Okay, go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
No, what I in all seriousness, I really want to caution the board about talking about specifics and, you know, kind of ping-ponging things that were said, you know, today in public, because the situations are very specific. The details, you know, are different for each person, and to kind of speak about it here without actual knowledge is, you know, difficult and could raise some issues. What I'm suggesting is the process piece that was requested is perfectly appropriate. It's been asked for, but to discuss the specifics and details and how it may or may not have been fair, I just think is wandering into sensitive areas and could like to caution the board to refrain.
I get it. I was the bad boy, and I mentioned one of the teachers, so I apologize for that. But I agree, you know, that there's a process. But I know that regional superintendents are very busy. I just don't know how much time they take to actually review this stuff if they're handed a bunch. I mean, I'll personally go and ask the instructionals in my district how they handled those terminations, because I want to know that it is being followed properly. If they're being non-renewed and it's supposed to go through a process, I want to know that that process is being followed, and it's not just signing a bunch of forms that are put in front of you, that you're actually taking a look at why the non-renewal is happening. Mrs. McQuinn.
So going back to my initial request for point of privilege, I just want to know from our superintendent to Mr. Oswald, to regional superintendents, that the process that we have in place, we have venues for support. And then a principal determines at the end of the year, this is not going to work. I think we have lots of great procedures in place through policies and through bulletins. I just want the assurance that when it comes to us, it's been followed. And as to not letting a teacher know until the end of a term, frankly, if you have been an administrator in a school and you let a teacher know and they're still in front of kids, you got a nightmare going on. So there are pros and cons to all of that.
Mrs. Whitfield.
Can I just make one comment really quickly? One of the things that I remember from my days of working here is how difficult it was to get rid of terrible teachers. And so I want to be careful that we don't go and swing the other direction. I appreciate this process that we've gone through to get to a point where we can let go of a teacher. I think this annual contracts are a little bit more effective in that way. Obviously, I don't want to lose a good teacher by any means. That's awful. So as long as we can constantly strive to achieve that balance where we're not letting go someone just because there's a personality conflict, and we're definitely letting go of people who are not doing a good job teaching. That is truly true. Everybody can't do it. So I just want to say that I'm not against letting go of bad teachers, and I appreciate when that happens. So I don't want that to be lost in this conversation, because there was a point where that was something we just could not do.
Dr. Robinson.
All right. My issue is coaching. And so when I say that no teacher, or actually any other employee, should be non-reappointed without seeing it coming, is because they should have had numerous counseling sessions and coaching sessions. So they have been alerted that there is something that is viewed by administration as not being as good as desired. So it should not be a surprise. The other thing that I just want to add, and I don't think this should be part of public record, but I would ask that HR and regionals and everybody, if a teacher's being non-reappointed, that you look at their PYG from the previous year. It would fascinate me to see if we had teachers who were being non-reappointed that had PYGs that were high. That would be a deep dive that we would need to look into, right? I suspect that we know that there are people who are rated highly, who are not having, highly effective or effective, who don't have the PYGs that would be required to get our children where we want them to be, right? So, but it just would be very interesting if the reverse situation was true. Somebody who's being non-reappointed and had a high PYG, they need to be grabbed and placed in another school quickly. Thank
Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, every meeting we have people who stand in front of us and speakers. We have absolutely no idea how accurate the information that they give us. And I think that's why I'm a little defensive when it comes to these kinds of things, because we're only hearing one side of a story, and principals have had an entire year working through these along with a lot of support. So I think it's just something we've got to keep in mind, because we had one speaker that spoke to us tonight that had all kinds of crazy things that were said, and there's not a single one of us know if any of that was true. And I think that just puts a perspective on where we've got to go.
Okay, I think we're done with this one. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. P3, Mr. Superintendent.
Is it P3? I recommend the board the personal addendum as submitted.
Motion by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. P4.
I recommend the board approve the second personnel addendum as submitted.
Motion by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. PC2.
PC2. I recommend the board approve the guarantee maximum price to James B. Pirtle Construction Company, Inc., DBA Pirtle Construction Company for facilities renovations and repairs for Acreage Pines Elementary School, and authorize the superintendent and the board chair to finalize and sign all necessary documents.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Dr. Robinson?
so this is the item I'm abstaining on, right? But I don't see my document attached. Is it attached
No.
to the minutes? Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 6-1 with Dr. Robinson abstaining. SP1?
Yes, sir. SB1, I recommend the board approve the charter schools in the Palm Beach County School District have access to 4 safe school officer options pursuant to Florida Statute 1006.12, as amended by Senate Bill 7030, implementation of legislative recommendations of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mr. Shaw. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. ST3.
ST3, I recommend the board approve the renewal of the agreement with Parent Child Center, Inc., effective July 20th, 2019 through June 30th, 2020.
Motion by Ms. Brill, second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? Dr. Robinson?
I just pulled this because I'm going to vote against it, and I'll explain why under some of the other mental health agenda items.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Dr. Robinson in opposition. ST4.
ST4, I recommend the board approve the mental health assistance allocation and district implementation plan as submitted.
Motion by Ms. Brill, second by Mr. Shaw. Discussion, Dr. Robinson?
So I will go ahead and start this discussion now. So, no, I'm just going to vote against it, and then I'll give more details in the next agenda item. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Dr. Robinson voting nay. ST5.
ST5, Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the behavioral health agreements as part of our mental health plan, effective July 1, 2019 through June 2022.
Motion by Ms. Brill, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So I'm sure all of you are tired of me talking about MTSS and social, emotional, and mental health and all that stuff. I think that this is such an important issue, and I'm so concerned and afraid that we're going to get it wrong. We have resources coming at us. A lot of things are changing rapidly. We have a new director of mental health, I think, is that the right title? And it's just so much change. So that's why, and so part of this is, and I've been pushing for a couple years now to put processes in place where we actually know if these agencies help our children. So what I understand to be true is that we have had these agreements with these behavioral health agreements over the past several years, and there's been really no accountability. We can't really drill down, and we have started the work to put processes in place through a portal and other means to be clear about what services they're able to provide so that principals can help to choose the right agency to provide services for their students. But what's even more important to me after that is that we know actually that they helped. And so part of the process that is very, very slowly moving forward is to work with these agencies to put metrics in place to measure how well they help the students. So, for example, if they're counseling a student for, let's say, anger management, then the agencies might decide that one of the metrics would be a decreased number of out-of-classroom referrals, right? And if they don't see a decreased number, then we have to collectively reevaluate their practices. And so I'm just disturbed that I've been talking about this for so long, been having these conversations for a couple years about putting these accountability measures in place. This was long before Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And now it's even, more important, I think, or everybody sees how important it is, I hope. And so these behavioral health agreements are for 3 years. They were signed off by the various agencies. If other board members want to talk following that, then I'm going to make a motion to amend this to have these agreements be for 1 year only, so that then we can put these processes in place and bring them back, as well as the other agencies, behavioral health cooperative agreement agencies for 1 year so we can put these accountability measures in place with their agreement, with working together so that we know that they help children, right? Because honestly, what's been happening is they say things like, well, you referred 15 kids to us and we closed the file on 14. That does not tell me if you helped Johnny, right? And, okay, I'll be done for now.
So before we take up a motion by Dr. Robinson to change this, does anybody else want to discuss? Dr. Robinson, you want to make a motion to amend?
Yes, so I would like to amend this so that these, 7 agency cooperative behavioral health agreements are for 1 year instead of 3.
Motion by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion, Mrs. Andrews.
Could Keith Oswald or somebody come up here to let us know that if we change
Use your microphone, Mrs. Andrews.
to tell us if this is going to be a problem for us when we make this major change?
Mr. Superintendent, I think you need to address this if you want, Mr. Oswald.
I was just fine. Mr. Oswald and Dr. Sheffield will speak to it at this time.
Yeah, we'll reach out to, if we do amend those for 1 year, we'll reach out to the agencies. We've had a good working relationship with them for many years. I do not see that they're going to have an issue to reduce it to 1 year. And we'll work together with them to put some accountability around how successful they are when working with the students.
And I would just add, I mean, now that I've heard it, I actually agree with this amendment. It'll allow us to create the accountability metrics moving forward. I would ask, though, after that year and we get the accountability metrics in place, then we look at a 3-year contract after we get all the pieces that satisfy our desires for accountability.
Absolutely.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor on the amended motion? Motion carries 7-0. Back to the main motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Last item, Mr. Superintendent, TL3.
Mr. Chair, I recommend the board approve the in-district license agreement with Wilson Language Training Corporation effective July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and authorize the superintendent and the board chair finalize all necessary documents.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Ms. Whitfield. Discussion? Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. Let me just say, I think that we have too many reading programs. I think that that we really need to look at what programs are effective in terms of phonics, phonemic awareness, and decoding. I think that that is a major, major issue. It's foundational, right? And so, like, I'm fully supporting this. I'm troubled that schools that choose to use the Wilson Foundations program have to purchase their own, right? And so I would like us to, as we move forward with the next, what's the adoption, textbook adoption and so forth, that we look at how the various programs that schools have been using have been successful in those areas, phonics, phonemic awareness, decoding, and determine which one is best for our district. I think that we need to centralize this a little bit more. I really do. It's foundational, and I've met, many times with some of the dyslexia advocates. They have convinced me, right? And in all the reading I've done, it has convinced me that this is just critically important for all children, and I want it to be part of core instruction, right? Not just the pull-out. What is it? What's the word? Interventions, right? I want it to be part of core instruction, because I think that if we are supporting our teachers so that they have the skills to effectively teach in these areas, that we will have less children who have to go through the little RTI process and walk down the path to some label and then getting pulled out and having interventions and so forth. It's core. We got to look at our K2 reading. And so this just triggered that for me. I'm fully supportive of this. In my opinion, we should do foundations, but I'm not the expert, but I do believe that we need to do one program district-wide and do it well and support it with professional development and materials.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. I'm finally to that place where everything's starting to come back around again, because I remember having this conversation before. So one of the things that my understanding with Wilson was that it didn't work for every child. So when you come back, if you decide to come back with this, can you let us know, like, what is the best option as well, so that we can understand the difference between what's the best and maybe what works for each student? Thank you.
Mr. Brill, I knew it. You'd want to speak on this.
Well, I was just going to make a simple statement. One size never fits all. So we are, I'd like to see the information come back, but we do need to have other options, because just the way one child learns with one program, it's not going to be the same with another. That's why we have individualized education plans.
Mrs. Andrews?
And so this will be part of that workshop that's coming? We'll be talking about these kinds of things as we do our literacy workshop for reading? This will be something here. Okay.
Dr. Robinson?
Great. When is the literacy workshop?
It's not been calendared.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, we've been in discussions. We're actually going to have some conversations starting tomorrow now that we have the support team in place. It's interesting that what you said, Dr. Robinson, because I actually was talking to the team. Now that I've got through year one, we got through graduations, I've recovered from graduations, I started asking these questions, and Ed and I started talking about it. And so I hear what Ms. Brill is saying, but we as a district have to have a core. So when you think about, balanced literacy, the type of level readers our kids have, guided reading, these are things that in every district that I've been trained in these things. And I don't know, and the reason why you need to get some consistency is because you have to be able to support people. You have to remember, we just went through this whole debate about professional development, how teachers teach. Well, if we can't have 187 different ways of doing this, because then we can't support it. We literally can't disperse a team to help teachers get better. And when teachers transfer from one school to another, they then have to learn a whole new way of doing things. And when kids transfer from school to school, it just confuses them, because what I was learning here no longer exists. And so we've got to figure out how we can centralize some things. Now, autonomy is always going to be part of our DNA, but some just core basic teaching principles around literacy have to be instilled. And the whole team is excited, and I'm excited to talk to the literacy team tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to begin this journey.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. And just for clarification, I'm not talking about having 187 different programs, but I do believe that we do need more than one. You need a core program, and of course, then you need alternate programs. So it's not that we need to have as many programs as we have. I'm not saying that, but we do need to be cognizant that every student learns differently.
Dr. Robinson?
I hope we know that. And I hope the principals know that, and I hope the teachers know that. But we need to have a good foundation or core, right? And I'm just saying, it has to, like, all the time people say to me, you don't have phonics? And I keep backing up and trying to say, well, yeah, we do. May I ask what the answer to that question on the test is? Tell us where we are with phonics instruction, and then I'll be quiet for tonight.
I don't know.
Phonics instruction is part of core. We have Words Your Way that has been purchased in the last adoption. So Foundations is used in some of our schools have switched to use that as the core, and other schools Foundations is used as an intervention.
Okay, so one more thing.
Sure.
So it's my understanding, just for clarification, that there's an educator who actually was promoted today, that when she was an elementary school principal, used Foundations and core throughout her school and did a fantastic job and had all these wonderful gains, right? And so that's just an example. What I know from having 3 sons and a grandson, the girls, I don't know, they just come to it easier, it seems, but that they need clear instruction in phonics, phonemic awareness, and decoding. And that may be a significant part of our gap.
I want to be clear, that's phonics instruction, phonemic awareness, that's all part of our core instruction. So it's which programs being used at which school is what I think what the debate is here.
So my request is, so we have different schools using different programs for their core. Let's look at their data, right? And let's disaggregate that data and see, we're gonna have to assume that they're doing it with Fidelity, right? Yeah, I know, but we have to assume that, right? Unless somebody tells us otherwise, and then you could put an asterisk, unless you know otherwise, right? But my point is, what's working for us and our kids, right? And then maybe share that data with all the principals, right? I'm just telling you, I've become a believer in Wilson, but I'm not trying to impose my belief system. I just think that we need to be more universal for the purpose of professional development and material support.
Yes, ma'am, we're going to look at all that, and we're going to get it ready for the workshop, and we got it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So, Mr. Superintendent, you said that now that you're recovered from the graduation, so I just want to tell the board members. So I stood behind him on most of those graduations, and after like the 300 or the 400 hand we shook, he'd start fidgeting, and I'd say, "Would you stop fidgeting? You're making my shoulder hurt." So it was fun standing behind the superintendent at all those graduations, because it was a real treat to hear his remarks about how he was hurting, and I was hurting right behind him. But anyway, the meeting is adjourned, so all of you go home.